60 years, Cuba has sat just 90 miles off the Florida coast as a frozen reminder of the Cold War, a neighbor that shares our waters, but not our system. Now, a new idea circulating in Washington and in Miami's Cuban-American community. What if the island's long economic collapse eventually pushes it towards some form of U.S. territorial status? The idea sounds like something from a history book about Puerto Rico or Guam. Yet the conversation is surfacing again as Cuba struggles with blackouts, food shortages, and a government that has lost a huge share of its working-age population to migration. Any talk about Cuba's future quickly runs into a very real piece of American geography already on the island, the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay. Military analysts note that if instability ever forced a major security or humanitarian operation on the island, Guantanamo would become the central hub for airfields, naval access, and logistics. That base has been in U.S. hands since 1903, which means the U.S. already maintains a permanent strategic footprint inside Cuba, whether Havana likes it or not. And that raises a bigger geopolitical question about the Caribbean. If the Cuban government continues to lose control of its economy and its population, which it has at an accelerated pace over the past few weeks, what comes next? A wave of migration into Florida? A power vacuum that attracts China or Russia back in a more overt way? Or something even stranger? A long-term transition where parts of the island tighten their relationship with the U.S.? It sounds far-fetched, yet Washington has a long history of territorial arrangements across the Pacific and the Caribbean. Our next guest represents Wisconsin's 5th District and also co-founded the bipartisan Cigar Caucus. Congressman Scott Fitzgerald joins us now.
Good to be with you.
Well, cigars are a big part of Cuba, but I mean, this is actually a pretty serious topic. There are legitimate conversations about turning Cuba into a territory.
Yeah, I think that certainly President Trump has sparked most of those discussions. Mm-hmm. You have to remember he's a real estate guy, right? He has been his whole life. And he certainly has kind of talked about maybe even licking his chops a little bit about what Cuba could become. But I think after that, it's kind of nondescript. I mean, if you think about the Castros, and especially with Raul Castro still kind of running the country with an iron fist for so many years, it's clearly broken, but I think it's still strategically a little bit difficult for us to know exactly what the next move is.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people that have their fingers crossed that eventually it will completely collapse, and we could be helpful.
What are you hearing from your Cuban-American colleagues in Congress? We've got a few of them, and they're part of a community that is deeply skeptical about any kind of change in Cuba that happens where the original family is not completely removed. Hardcore Cubans want that regime completely removed and done away with. So what are you hearing from your colleagues? Yeah,
I think Maria Salazar is probably the one that I've seen talk about it and heard her talk a little bit about just how many people she represents that have, a single generation tie to Cuba.
Right.
As people fled over literally the last 30, 40 years, where there's still been kind of this, it's not an official kind of line of immigration, but certainly there are many people that have continued to come out of Cuba over the years. So, I think it's something that the president is obviously very focused on. It's going to be a little difficult to maneuver while Iran is underway, but they're watching it very closely right now.
In a way, it's taking down China's other footprint in our Western Hemisphere. I mean, they've had a bit of a presence in the Caribbean, to put it mildly.
Right.
This puts a real wrinkle in their plans.
Well, what really, I think, kind of snapped this twig is that at the end of the day, Venezuela was still providing them with the oil that they needed on a regular basis, as well as some of the other detractors, some of the countries that don't necessarily sit well with the states. And that's why we've seen a decline that's happened very quickly over the last couple of months.
I want to move over to another hot topic on the Hill right now, the FISA warrant issue. FISA warrants have been fairly in the grand scheme of things, a fairly new addition to our system where, the government is given the permissions to do things that most Americans are very opposed to.
Right.
That said, every single year it's reauthorized, and what I hear from lawmakers all the time, especially freshmen, who started off saying, we hate FISA, we don't like FISA, they'll go in, they'll get briefed, and then they come out going, this is kind of a necessary part of today's national security apparatus. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's an absolute necessary tool that's part of our intelligence system that gives those that need to make some very difficult decisions the amount of information that they need to make those decisions. Specifically, anyone within our security area or in the military. So it's always going to be a very sensitive topic. Mm-hmm. But what we did was we put some reforms in place that kind of reversed what the Biden administration had been doing, which was exploiting.
Talk about those reforms. I mean, because I think most Americans are very unclear about what those reforms actually do. Yeah,
many of the violations were in and around the query process, which is simply a search, looking for very kind of a small circle of information that's only available to the intelligence community, yet it was being used for all other types of searches, and those violations came to light, which is why we revisited that issue. Now, moving forward, we're under a very tight timeline in that we have to mid-April to renew this. The question is whether or not you should have to garner a warrant when you take action under 502. And quite honestly, I think there's a little bit of a misconception of how difficult that is and what that looks like. But we've already seen the reforms work very well, which is why I saw President Trump today actually posted and said, listen, members of the House, members of Congress, we need to get this done, and we need to get this done on time.
So what's scary about this, Congressman, is you've got judges who are in charge of looking at specific warrants and then granting those warrants to allow our intelligence community to listen in on phone calls or communications. But what we've seen out of the Biden administration is how politicized that has become. And when you have a judge who is appointed by, say, Biden or Obama and is automatically not going to be very fair-minded, according to some, that's a problematic situation.
Yeah, the question is whether or not a judge should be involved in that process, actually. Does the intelligence community need to, and can they, make that decision to present a bunch of evidence to a judge under the time frame that exists for many of these things, which are, decisions that have to be made in real time. So I feel like after the president's push that he did yesterday, that I think you're going to see some members of Congress kind of see the light on this. It's an 18-month, it's a clean renewal. I don't think that the president would do that unless he knew it was absolutely necessary.
Do you think we're going to encounter a time where this won't require renewals, where this will just be a permanent apparatus inside our system?
I mean, that could happen, although I don't know that that would be healthy, because I think the thing that drives this is technology a lot of times, and we know that that's changing on a regular basis. I mean, the ability that the CIA and the FBI has to do these queries continues to be driven by what type of technological advances there are for the intelligence community. So as a result of that, I think it's healthy for Congress to revisit this on a regular basis and have a discussion about, is this in violation of the Fourth Amendment? So I don't think it's a bad thing that we're reviewing it. I think Iran is also a factor in the president's decision to kind of push this right now.
Right.
Because he knows that, a lot of the information that we've gained, that Israel's gained, has come through this process.
What is the biggest misunderstanding that you think that the American public has when approaching this topic, when looking at FISA warrants, when looking at, how we're using it to keep America safe? What's the misconception?
I think it's, and some members have kind of driven this, which is, this isn't like going to a circuit court judge and asking for a warrant on a drug bust or something. Some of these things are very complicated, and are developed over many, many months, even years, under intelligence before that information is finally garnered. But I don't think you would have seen some of the action that the Trump administration has taken on an international level over the last year without having this as part of the information that was available at their fingertips.
Yeah, I guess that's what makes it such a sticky topic, because you can't exactly explain to people the lives that were potentially saved, because a lot of this is under wraps still. But again, one of the big issues that critics have with this is that you have a special FISA court, which is necessary because, as you say, they are complicated issues. And the problem, once again, is in the fallibility of the individual sitting in that FISA court.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of members that are very upset with the way it was used under the Biden administration.
Are you confident that we are able to fix that?
I think that was fixed with the 56 reforms that were done this past Congress. We had a couple of members of the Judiciary Committee that worked very hard on that. We're very diligent. We saw the numbers on those queries come way down. We know that there's now a process that they must go through to actually demonstrate that there's been an attorney involved in it. So there were many different things that were done to reform this process already, and I think we've seen the results of that. That's why I think I'm comfortable moving, certainly with an 18 months extension. I think a lot of other members will be comfortable with that by the end of the week.
Given what's happening in the Middle East, I think a lot of Americans are with Congress in this one, at least for the time being.
Absolutely.
Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you.